Hello, welcome to John McHugh Real Estate. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to talk about everything surrounding selling a home, starting with where do sellers come from, how do we meet them, and where do we take it from there. Today I'm lucky to have realtor Deb Feldman from Coldwell Banker here with me. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here today.
I'm glad that you were able to come in. It's really nice to have people in here that I've worked with before and that have been practicing in the industry for a long time. How long have you been working in real estate, Deb?
Geez, John, I'm going on 20 years in real estate as a full-time realtor.
Excellent. So that's a nice long time. And where do you normally focus on?
I usually focus on the Metro West area of Boston. Mainly Natick, Framingham, Southborough, Weston, Wellesley. I try to keep within like a half an hour, 45-minute vicinity of our office in Wellesley.
Oh, all right. So that's good. So you'll keep it around basically where you're most knowledgeable and where you can spend the most time.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
We're in the same office now. I met you in the Natick office, and that was a few years ago. Yeah. And we've been working together ever since. And now Coldwell Banker has shifted locations, but the brand always stays the same. And it's nice when the realtors stick together.
It does. I always tell people that my office moves just because of, two offices merging together or whatever the case may be. But like, I've never moved real estate companies.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. I haven't either.
Yeah.
For 23 years, I've been at the same company. I've never felt a need to move. If I did, of course, people call us all the time and do that. I got into real estate because I had gone to school for business and studied all things business, and I met a number of real estate agents, and I really liked them. They were outgoing. They didn't have what seemed to be like a set schedule, and I thought that seemed really interesting. I was sure that they did plenty of hard work, but I knew that they were happy and they were doing well, and so that's what made me want to get into a career in real estate. How about you? What was your first thought of it?
It was always my passion. I have a finance background. I'm an accountant by quote-unquote trade. But again, I guess the versatility or the flexibility of being a real estate, especially when my kids were younger, was truly a big help. But I have since realized that real estate, although it is a career, it's also something that I enjoy. I enjoy waking up every morning and saying, I'm going to a job that I really enjoy.
That's great. When you do something that's a passion, we all love that, and we can't all do it. That's why I'm glad that I found what I love to do. And I always think about how it all starts with the process, and today we're focusing on the selling process, and specifically how do we find someone who's looking to sell a home, and how does it happen organically. We all have our friends and we have our families, and I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that you do to get in contact with a seller, from not knowing them or knowing them, but from the very beginning when you're meeting a seller?
So I guess when I first started, John, of course, no one had sellers, no one had, I didn't have buyers. And so I just started talking about what my new career was and what I was doing. And I did a lot of volunteerism. I was active in the community, and so that also helped. And then slowly but surely, people would say to me, hey, I'm looking to sell my house. I'd like to give you a shot. My first actually opportunity was my manager had given me an opportunity. It come to her attention. The owner of the company at the time said, I need a really good real estate agent to work with this couple. So she went with me, which was really nice. Yeah,
That's
it
great.
was really nice. And I will never forget it because I sat down at the table. I had my book. I was shaking like a leaf. And the husband said to me, if you think I'm moving, I have another thing coming. You have another thing coming. And I'm doing this.
This is how it goes, folks. This is how it goes, right?
And I'm doing this for my wife, but there is no way that I'm moving. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're glad to have your manager there then.
Yeah, I was like, oh, now what do I do? Fast forward, I've worked with them several times. I've gotten a million referrals from them. I love them. He's since passed away, but his wife is still very much around, and I've helped them out quite a few times. But that was my first listing appointment, was I'm not moving. And the next thing I knew, I found them a place. He fell in love with it, and he was moving. And so ever since then, I've kind of never looked back. I figured if I could get through that hurdle, I could get through anything.
That says so much about you, because I know you, and I know that you're applying your own personality to that situation. Like I'd see you apply your personality to something that's going on in the office, a discussion that's happening, an agent that needs assistance with something that maybe you've navigated before that they haven't. I think we all bring a lot of ourselves and our own personalities into this business, because tell me this, I'm sure there are a lot of people that would have sat there hearing I'm never moving and handled it a lot differently. Don't you think so?
I guess so. To my credit, I said, obviously, his wife wants to move, and sometimes the wives rule the roost, not always.
Good
but
for you.
I said, I think he's moving, he just doesn't know it yet.
I hear you, and so, sometimes that's much better when these things happen organically. In the past, there was cold calling, picking up the phone, going down the phone book, prospecting by door knocking. I think if you were to knock on someone's door nowadays, that it would be so out of the ordinary that even if they were looking to sell, I think that they would question what was going on. I think things have changed quite a bit. So when we move past cold calling and door knocking for prospecting, what are some things that you do to meet people that you haven't established a relationship with?
I send out a newsletter, and it covers a wide range of towns. So I do send out a newsletter. I'm from the generation where I'm trying to do Instagram and advertise on Instagram, and I haven't even attempted TikTok. I send out postcards to the surrounding areas when I list a house. But I think mostly it's word of mouth. In this industry, you have to open up your mouth and you have to talk to people, and you have to tell them what you're doing. No one knows what you're doing until you're boasting in the grocery store line. Hey, I'm a realtor, or let me tell you about the market, or let me tell you what's going on. So I think it's parties, it's volunteer places. It's I'm fortunate enough that I grew up in the Metro West area, so I get a lot of referrals and business from there.
Excellent.
But I can't do the cold calling.
Right.
I have trouble with that.
And I know that our company specifically has exercises sometimes where they'll have a blowout of, we're going to do this event for 4th of July, or we're going to do this event for this part of the year where we make so many calls to so many areas, and different things that are initiated from a corporate standpoint. And I'll do it if we're all there, because you're the first to throw in and go along with what's going on, to be supportive. But it's difficult, especially when you're not certain how it's going to be received on the other end. And phones nowadays, when it picks up, there's a lot of spam out there. You touched on social media. I think everyone takes a bit of a different approach on that. And I've seen your social media, and I think it's great. The reason that I like it is it comes from you. It's genuine. It's unique. You have a different approach. You make me stop and say, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that naturally, but I will say there's a lot of social media out there, and I've spent a lot of time. I actually took a lot of classes to study it, and it was really helpful. You could just go in and start it. It seems very basic, but the more you learn about it and its evolution, it can be very helpful and more productive. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people out there, and it's clear they've either hired a company or they're using another service to make their Instagram, social media, Facebook, TikTok posts. And if you know the person personally and you see these posts come out and it's not their same lingo or their same verbiage, I think it can seem a little bit more like a framework that they're trying to fit into. So I'll congratulate you on that, because yours is very genuine.
And I think the same with you. I definitely think, it's not easy, and I think we're a similar age. I might be a little bit, I think I'm a lot older, actually.
I doubt it. I doubt that. You're looking great.
But I think our generation, this whole Instagram, the latest and greatest in our company is they're advertising on YouTube, and I'm like, seriously?
Right.
Because I go on YouTube to how to figure out how to fix something. I never thought it was for real estate, but apparently it's number one. So I think we can always learn, but it's the old dog, new tricks type of situation. And I go back to the, pounding pavement and getting myself in front of people.
Right, I agree with you. And when people will say YouTube, Deb's exactly right. Sometimes you're going to go there just to have a lesson on how to fix something or how to find out how to cook something even. And I think a lot of people are talking about it in terms of YouTube being part of Google. And if you're ranked on YouTube and your result comes back on Google, then obviously it's going to boost you higher. So they want to have us do YouTube and this and that as part of the entire picture to bring it all to the top of Google. And you're exactly right. These things can be great. And if you were to go all in on any one of these things, I think it could be super helpful. But I like your idea of pounding the pavement. And that can go along with direct advertising, direct marketing. When you talk about kind of heading back to things like the old-fashioned ways instead of being all digital and technical, I like to do direct mail. I do mailing, like you said with your newsletter. I keep up with it. This is interesting, I think. I've changed my mailing lists a number of times. I have my core people that I've sold to before, your sphere of influence, as you would call it, people that you're familiar with and they're in your life. I always have that group on whatever mailing list I'm doing, but I've changed my list depending on response, town, price point, and other variables. Do you do direct mail?
I do direct mail. Interestingly enough, Christmas is the time when I usually send out, and I think you've done it too, I send out notepads to thousands of people.
Who gives them? Marcia Marks, right?
Yeah.
Marcia Marks will get the order of the notepads,
yeah,
right?
And she did it on her own, and shame on me. It kind of fell through the cracks. It was a busy winter or late fall, and it kind of fell through the cracks. And I still have people calling me and going, are you in real estate? I didn't get your notepad this year. I love that.
I love it.
And I'm like, don't worry, they'll be out next winter, I promise you. It's a lot of work because it's, I guess I could hire someone, but I sit there and write little notes.
Too.
Yeah, I do a lot. But so I do the notepads, I do the postcards. I don't know. I think, John, like yourself, when you do a good job with one listing, that's usually when you get others from, friends and family of the people that you listed for. I think at this point, both of us are kind of word of mouth after 20 years and referrals too.
And we're lucky with that, knock on wood, because when you're starting out, I mean, it's a long time. When you talk about the mailing and we talk about knowing people, I know you do other advertisements. What other types of advertisements do you do? Where do you advertise? I'll give you an example. I do the kiosk at CVS. I don't expect anyone to walk in to buy their NyQuil and say, oh, I'm going to do this real estate instead. But to be maybe top of mind, I do the Natick local town pages. I've done Planet Fitness while you're there working out. And I don't expect any one of them to generate a necessary phone call or even a listing. But a lot of it, I'm spending the money to remain top of mind so that maybe when they are serious and I do get the opportunity to be in front of them, they might say, I remember him or I recognize him. Yeah. Do you think of top of mind, and what other things do you do?
So my biggest advertising is I do advertising on social media. So I actually do paid advertising for Facebook, Instagram. I haven't gotten to TikTok yet, mostly Facebook and Instagram, and basically it targets people that are thinking of selling, and how it does it, I leave that for the analysis.
Great. I think that's impressive.
But yeah, so I do that. So if you start looking at the Wall Street Journal, all of a sudden my little ad pops up. So hopefully, I don't know how much it works, but I think it's also they remember me or they remember my face, and oftentimes I'll have someone come to an open house and go, oh my gosh, where have I seen you? And I'm like, Facebook? And they're like, that's where I've seen you.
Love it.
So that's kind of exciting.
That's very exciting when you get to see any type of return. And I think Deb just made the great point. She wasn't necessarily looking to get something in writing immediately, but you stay top of mind, and people think of you like that. Here's a good one. When you finally do meet that person who says that they want to sell, and you're going to meet with them. What's the first thing? How do you begin the conversation with them and talk about where you're going to take it from there?
Yeah, so once they've called me on the phone, we set up an appointment, and I always go to their house. And before I go to the house, I look up everything that I possibly can about the house. I'll look up the permits. I'll look up the deed to see what's going on there. Are there any easements? Are there, do they have multiple mortgages? And do they need to close out some of those mortgages that have already been paid off? So I come with a bevy of information. I do a map of the property. I come up with some comps, but I've learned my lesson very early on in real estate. I did my quote unquote market analysis. I said, I'm going to do this in one shot. Like, I was big shot. And so I did a market analysis, and the unfortunate thing was that the house wasn't maintained very well. So my market analysis was way off. So I always do a two-step process. And I email the client and say it would really be helpful if you came up with a list of things that you've done to the house, so that when we meet, I'll be able to walk away with that list, and that will affect what I'm going to recommend that you put your house on the market. So I come with a stack of paper, they come with their piece of paper, and basically at that point I sit down with them and I say, okay, what are you thinking? Like, what's your goal? Where do you want to go? What are you doing? Are you moving out of state? Do you want to downsize? Do you want to upsize? Like, what is it that you're thinking? Because most important is that whatever they're thinking, it needs to be doable.
Right, that's a very good point. And I will tell you, that's something that a lot of people don't realize in the end, that if you can't accomplish it, we need to identify that, acknowledge that right now. I think that's a fascinating point that you made. And you take it from there at that point. And I take it from there. I also make sure, after my first experience, if both parties, if there are two, are on board. And if they have children, where the children fall into place, like, are we not telling the children? I just had a couple that said, like, do me a favor, I want you to come when my kids aren't home. This will be a big transition for them, and I don't want them to know about it till we've done it. So I always take into respect the family dynamics and what's going on. Once we've established that, I ask for a tour of their home. Okay, good. Yeah. And you have a look around. And I have a look around. I ask questions. Sometimes I take a few snapshots and promise not to post them anywhere. Sure, because the laundry's hanging out and the towel hasn't been hung up properly. But it's basically for me to remember when I go back to do the market analysis. And I ask them a time frame, and I'm usually back in the house within 2 to 3 days. I work on the market analysis and come back to present it. That's great. So that's a quick turnaround. It's amazing when you were saying that, because I'm always trying to speak to people and see, oh, what's new, what's different, what can I draw out to present to the audience? And 95% of it is exactly what I do myself, and that's really interesting to know. And I would say you're the best realtor I've ever spoke to thus far. I'm just kidding. Come on, It sounds like a great plan, and walking through that house can bring so much knowledge to us. And I think not only what I'm seeing, but the interaction and speaking with the people during that time and seeing how they feel about the house and the pride they take in it, and getting a good feeling about how they're speaking as to how motivated they are. And then they want to move forward with all of it. And I also try and find out if they're speaking to anybody else or what have you. I want to make sure that I give them the best information that I can based just on their house and their circumstances and the fair market value. So you'll go back, you'll prepare your market analysis. 3 days is a great turnaround, 2-3 days, that's impressive. And then you'll meet with them again. And most people, I want to ask you, are they more concerned about the marketing, the advertising, and what you're going to do? Or are they more concerned about a dollar amount? What is the conversation from the seller's point of view more often with you? I'm basically concerned if it's more about the dollar amount or how we're going to arrive at it. Right. So I have to tell you something. I think they're more concerned about the dollar amount. I try to wedge in the marketing, and I'm really transparent about the marketing, because you and I know some of the marketing is more for us than it actually is for the house. Sure. Why don't you elaborate on that? It's an excellent point. Yeah. So it's so basically Coldwell Banker does
most 99% of the marketing for us, meaning we pay for it, we press a button, and then they run with it. So for instance, one of the things that they do is they advertise in Boston Magazine. So I will say to a client, listen, this is really romantic. Your house is going to get into Boston Magazine. By the time it gets into Boston Magazine, 99% of the time I've already had it sold, because if you think of how long it takes to produce a magazine.
With any periodical or publication, there are timelines. Great point.
But I'll say, you never know. But and I come right out and say that one's for me. The biggest ones for them are getting it into multiple listing, getting into all the other search engines. The YouTube, I'm having trouble swallowing it, but I think that is a form of advertising that gets the younger crowd per se. So Coldwell Banker does it. They know how to target it towards certain age ranges and price points. So that, I think, is a good form of advertising. Also, they do Facebook and Instagram, what we know as Boost, but basically, again, they target people looking to buy. I'm trying to think what else.
You can use this, for example, this very show that we're doing right now is going to be a great post for you, should you want to do it, on YouTube. Deb Feldman, John McHugh Real Estate Show. I think the more you get out there, the better. And that would be an example of something you could put on YouTube. While we're at it, just to be a bit off topic, when we had these meetings about YouTube, and basically it was video, let's do video, I have to tell you, better safe than sorry. Better to hold off and learn a little bit more, because I have seen some people say, oh, video, okay. And some of the things that I have seen go out by some different agents here and there, I don't think that that's what they meant by video. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do agree.
Everyone's idea of silly or funny, I mean, I don't think it was just to have a video. I mean, there's a difference in quality. I think that's why we're at Coldwell Banker.
Yeah, so I think that they do a great job. And back to it, price is important, but I want anybody who's listening to this that's thinking of selling their home, we come up with a price. We don't hold a gun to your head saying, this is what you need to list it for. We recommend a price based on our experience. And I always tell my sellers, listen, when I'm not meeting with you, when I'm not doing an open house, when I'm not taking around buyers, I'm going to brokers' tours and I'm going to see houses. I'm going to open houses even if I don't have a client, so that I get exposure to what's on the market right now, and I get to see in person what's available on the market. So I'm giving you a recommendation based on my experience and something that you're most likely not doing. That isn't your job. Your job is to keep your job and to work, and I work to sell your house. But ultimately, we both come up with a price. It's not just the agent saying you're selling your house for $100,000 and that's it. You may come back to me and say, my neighbor down the street sold for $110,000. What do you think? Can we push the mark a little bit? And I'm open to a conversation. It's not just a one-way street. And I think that's important to know.
Very, very well said. And it can be very difficult to get that and let it sink in. Your experience shows, Deb. I can see how experienced you are by the way you speak about these things. And I'll sum that part up by saying one of the first things and last things I say to people during a market analysis is, whatever number you want, we can try it. Any number that you want to try, we can try it. So don't worry that we're going to battle about the number, because we'll be the first to know if the number we put it at is a fair market value number. We'll either have a ton of traffic and some offers, or the market will speak to us, we'll have a little action and maybe one offer, or we won't have any phone calls, showing requests, or offers. And in between here, just like our market analysis, is the right number. With the right price, it'll definitely go. So I love how you feel it out there and make sure that everyone knows. There is no specific blinking red number for any property. We can only say these similar homes have sold for this amount of money, which would lead us to think that your home would probably sell for about this range here too. That's right. And
there are definitely some websites out there, and I won't mention any names, that come up with an estimate of your home.
Sure.
And just all I say is seller beware. They haven't been in your home. So it could go either way. They
Right.
haven't seen your updated kitchen. They haven't seen your new garage doors. They haven't seen how meticulously you've maintained your house. Or geez, maybe you haven't had a chance to do the roof or whatever. They haven't seen any of that. So seller beware, when there's a number that comes up on these websites, it's probably not the right number.
Or a realtor's number. You're
Yep.
exactly right. So
Yep.
we'll take a look at all of that. You'll establish the value with the clients, and let's say you sign up the listing and you've got it there. We've talked about the price, and we've talked about what we do for marketing and advertising. So you've mentioned the different things that Coldwell Banker does. So you'll probably have someone come out to photograph the home right
Yes.
away. And how do
Yeah.
you go about that? Do you do drone photos? Do you have a specific
Yeah,
person you work with?
It depends. I do work with a photographer that I love. I don't know if I can put a plug in, but it's called Drone Home Media. So of course they do drones as well if needed. I'll recommend whether they should have a drone photograph or not. Like if you're on a really small piece of property
Right.
and your backyard isn't really groomed well, we're not doing a drone because it's not going to be a help. It's going to be a hindrance.
Right.
The other thing is, before we get ready to put your house on the market, I will walk around with you and say, hey, if there is a home inspection, these are the things that are going to come up. You might want to take care of X, Y, and Z, because it's going to come up in a home inspection, and I don't want you to go through that aggravation.
That's great, and we're going to get to some of the home inspection questions when we're there. And so you'll have some photographs taken, and then you'll put all that together, and you'll write your copy. And anything else you do with the clients prior to launching the property on MLS?
The most important thing that I do with the clients is make sure that they're on board with when we're doing open houses, when we're doing showings, because it's invasive. And you know, what I try to do is get in, especially if they're still living there, a couple of open houses, and sometimes a twilight open house, meaning, you know, an evening, or a commuter open house, whichever one you want to call it, so that the sellers have fixed times when they truly have to be out of the house. So it would be like 2 hours for each open house, and then it might be an hour and a half for a commuter open house. So we talk about what works for them. You know, some sellers will say to me, hey, Deb, I'm going away for the weekend. You know, you can show it all weekend. So I think I establish that. I establish how we're going to accept offers. So that's all up front and something that we've discussed. And I always recommend that you go through the open house process and go through a weekend before you accept an offer. Unless someone comes with a wheelbarrow of cash and, you know, a really great offer and no inspection contingencies. But I think it's just what they can expect. I think it's really important to have them know about that before we put it on the market.
I think that's great. The more you can do in advance to be prepared, the better. We've discussed a number of things regarding the home selling process, and we have a lot more to come, which we'll do in our next episode. Deb Feldman, thank you for being here, and we're going to continue this on the next one. We'll see you there.